The weathered, "For sale" sign had been there so long it had become part of the landscape. $1, that's all they were asking for, the forgotten Willow Creek Ranch. Most folks called it cursed, but to Emma Sullivan, 7 months pregnant and running from a life she needed to leave behind, it looked like salvation. The peeling paint, sagging porch, and overgrown fields whispered of possibility, rather than defeat. She didn't know why the property had been abandoned decades ago, or why no one in town would talk about the previous owners. All she knew was that this was her chance, perhaps her last one. What would she discover within those time-worn walls that connected to her own forgotten past? What secrets lay dormant, waiting to be unearthed? Emma's ancient Subaru groaned up the overgrown driveway, tall grass scraping the undercarriage. She parked beside the porch, engine ticking as it cooled. The ranch house loomed before her, weathered yet dignified in its neglect. She pressed a hand against her swollen belly. "Well, little one, this is home now." The key felt heavy in her palm, iron, ornate, with strange symbols etched along its shaft. Nothing like the modern keys she'd expected. The realtor had simply handed it over with averted eyes after Emma signed the peculiar $1 contract. Emma paused, remembering Mark's rage the night she'd left. The shattered glass, his promise to find her. She shuddered, pushing the memory away. The key slid into the lock with unexpected smoothness. One turn and the door creaked open, releasing the musty breath of decades. Inside, dust motes danced in shafts of afternoon light. Sheets draped over furniture like ghosts. Emma moved cautiously through the front room, pulling covers to reveal a surprisingly well-preserved sofa, rocking chair, and oak dining table. "Not exactly move-in ready," she murmured, running her finger through a layer of dust on the mantelpiece. But the structure seemed sound. No water damage or major structural issues that her limited budget couldn't address. In the kitchen, antique appliances stood like sentinels from another era. She turned a faucet experimentally, surprised when it sputtered to life with rusty water that gradually ran clear. "You're lucky the previous owner kept utilities connected," a gruff voice called. Emma gasps, spinning to face a weathered man standing in the doorway. "Didn't mean to startle you," he said, hat in hand. "Name's Jim Caldwell. Handle maintenance for properties around these parts." "Emma Sullivan," she instinctively placed a protective hand over her belly. Jim's eyes narrowed at her surname. "Sullivan, you say?" "Yes." "Is that significant?" He studied her face for an uncomfortable moment. "Town was surprised to hear someone bought this place, even for $1. It seems structurally sound." "Oh, the bones are good. Sullivan's built things to last." A pause. "You know why it was abandoned?" Emma shook her head. "Folks round here say the land has peculiarities." His gaze drifted to her belly, especially for expecting mothers. A chill climbed Emma's spine despite the summer heat. "I don't believe in superstitions, Mr. Caldwell. Belief don't factor into some things, Miss Sullivan." He replaced his hat. "I'll check your generator out back. You'll need it when storms hit." After he left, Emma explored upstairs. 3 bedrooms, a bathroom with a clawfoot tub. The master bedroom held a 4-poster bed, still made up with yellowed linens. In a smaller room, wallpapered with faded circus animals, Emma felt a flutter in her womb stronger than any movement yet. She placed her hand where the baby kicked. "You like this room, don't you?" she whispered. "We'll make it yours." As sunset painted the hills gold, Emma unloaded her meager possessions: clothes, books, an old laptop, and a few kitchen essentials. She'd fled with only what fit in her car. Jim returned with a box of supplies: flashlights, matches, canned goods. "Town's 20 minutes away in good weather," he explained. "Longer when roads flood. Be prepared." "Thank you." He hesitated at the door. "Not my place to say this, but a woman in your condition shouldn't be out here alone." Emma straightened. "I've managed so far. Just, if anything strange happens, don't ignore it." He tipped his hat. "Good night, Miss Sullivan." That night, Emma lay in the freshly made bed, listening to unfamiliar country sounds, crickets, distant coyotes, the house settling around her like an old man getting comfortable. "We'll be fine," she told her unborn child, though uncertainty gnawed at her edges. "This place is our fresh start." In her dreams, a woman in 1950s dress rocked in the chair downstairs, singing a lullaby Emma somehow knew but couldn't quite place. After 3 days of cleaning and organizing, Emma's food supplies dwindled to crackers and peanut butter. She studied herself in the bathroom mirror, hair pulled back, dark circles under her eyes, but a healthy flush to her cheeks from physical work. The isolation had been a balm to her nerves. Time to face civilization, she told her reflection. Willow Creek proved to be smaller than she'd expected, a handful of storefronts along a main street, an old-fashioned town square with a gazebo and a white steepled church. Emma parked her Subaru in front of Mabel's general store, feeling curious eyes tracking her through storefront windows. A bell jingled as she entered. The shop was a wonderful anachronism, wooden floors that creaked underfoot, glass jars of penny candy, household essentials, and local produce. A gray-haired woman looked up from behind the counter. "You must be the Sullivan girl who bought the old ranch," she said without preamble. "Emma Sullivan," she confirmed, extending her hand. "News travels fast." "Mabel Green," the woman replied, her handshake firm despite gnarled knuckles. "In towns this size, news is all we've got. That and memories." She studied Emma's face. "You've got the Sullivan look about you." Emma frowned. "I'm not related to the previous owners." Mabel's eyebrows rose. Interesting coincidence there. As Emma gathered necessities, fresh vegetables, milk, bread, cleaning supplies, she noticed conversations halting when she approached, resuming in whispers as she moved away. A toddler pointed at her belly until his mother hurriedly shushed him. At the register, Mabel rang up her items with efficient movements. "You planning to stay long?" "Indefinitely," Emma answered. "I'm fixing up the place." "Brave girl," Mabel remarked. "That property's been empty since '84. Why so long?" "Folks say it's bad luck." Mabel leaned forward. "But between us, land that good going for $1 suggests something more complicated." A middle-aged man in a sheriff's uniform entered, nodding politely to patrons before approaching Emma. "Sheriff Mills," he introduced himself. "Thought I'd introduce myself to our newest resident." "Emma Sullivan," she replied, noting his quick, assessing glance at her pregnant state. "Living out there alone?" "Yes. That's quite a distance if you need emergency services." He glanced meaningfully at her belly. "How far along?" 7 months, Emma answered, resisting the urge to shield herself from his scrutiny. "I appreciate the concern, but I've made arrangements with my doctor in the city." "City's 40 minutes away in good weather," he pointed out. "Country roads can be unpredictable, especially when the creek rises." "I'll keep that in mind," Emma said, feeling increasingly uncomfortable. Mabel intervened. "Your total is $42.97, dear." "Oh," she fumbled beneath the counter. "Nearly forgot. Found this while organizing yesterday. Thought you might find it interesting." She slid across a yellowed newspaper clipping. Emma glanced down and froze. The headline read, "Local family vanishes. Sullivan farm abandoned without explanation." Beneath was a photograph of a couple standing before her ranch house, much newer looking. The woman, with dark hair and a solemn expression, bore an uncanny resemblance to Emma herself. "Where did you get this?" Emma asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Local paper archives," Mabel replied casually. "Thought you should know the history." Sheriff Mills peered at the clipping, then at Emma with renewed interest. Striking resemblance. Emma's hand trembled slightly as she paid for her groceries. She carefully folded the clipping into her wallet. "Dr. Peterson still practices in town," the sheriff mentioned. "Delivered most of us, including the last Sullivan child. Might be worth a visit, considering your condition." Outside, Emma loaded her groceries with mechanical movements. Mind race. She hadn't mentioned her maiden name was Sullivan on any paperwork. She'd been using her married name, Wilson, since escaping Mark. How had Mabel known? As she pulled away, she noticed figures watching from various storefronts, some curious, some wary. In her rear-view mirror, she saw Sheriff Mills in conversation with an elderly Hispanic woman who stared after her car with unusual intensity. That night, Emma spread the newspaper clipping on her kitchen table. The date was April 1984, 40 years ago. The woman in the photo could have been her twin, except for the dated clothing and hairstyle. The man beside her had a protective arm around her shoulders, his expression grave. Jonathan and Margaret Sullivan and their infant daughter disappeared last Tuesday. Emma read aloud. No signs of foul play were discovered, though the family's personal belongings remained in the home. She placed her hand on her belly, feeling the baby shift restlessly. Coincidence, she told herself firmly. It has to, but as wind rattled the window panes, she couldn't shake the feeling that she'd seen the woman's face before. Perhaps in old family photos she'd never paid attention to, or in the mirror of her own forgotten memories. Emma had avoided the barn during her first week at the ranch. The sagging structure loomed at the edge of the overgrown fields, its weathered boards the color of wet ash, its presence somehow both inviting and forbidding. But after finding the newspaper clipping, her curiosity wouldn't let her rest. The morning air carried the scent of wildflowers and distant rain as Emma crossed the yard. Her boots left impressions in the dewy grass, marking a path where no one had walked for decades. The barn door was secured with a rusted padlock, bearing the initials J.S. Jonathan Sullivan, she presumed. Emma tugged at it. Experimentally, the hasp was loose, but the lock held firm. She retreated to the house for tools, returning with a crowbar she'd found in a kitchen drawer. "This feels wrong," she murmured, leveraging the metal against the hasp. And right at the same time, with a screech of protest, the hardware gave way. The padlock dropped into her palm, unexpectedly heavy. Emma tucked it into her pocket, inexplicably reluctant to discard this artifact of the past. The barn door groaned open on stiff hinges. Dust particles swirled in the shafts of light streaming through gaps in the roof boards. Emma stood in the doorway, allowing her eyes to adjust to the dimness. The interior was a time capsule. Farm equipment from another era stood frozen in formation. A tractor from perhaps the 1950s, various implements, whose purposes she could only guess, hand tools hanging on the walls. Every sim was preserved under a thick blanket of dust, yet strangely free of the cobwebs she'd expected. "Hello," she called, then felt foolish. No one had been here for 40 years. Emma ventured further inside. Her fingers traced the edge of a workbench where tools lay as if their owner had simply stepped away for lunch. A coffee cup, its contents long evaporated to dust, sat beside a leather-bound ledger. Something on one of the support beams caught her eye, symbols carved into the wood. Not random graffiti, but deliberate markings that formed a pattern. Similar carvings adorned each of the main posts, some faded with age, others surprisingly distinct. "What were you protecting against?" she whispered, tracing one symbol with her fingertip. It resembled a stylized tree with roots that spiraled downward. The baby kicked suddenly, more forcefully than ever before. Emma gasped, placing her hand over the spot. "You feel it too, don't you?" She moved deeper into the barn's shadowy recesses. Farm equipment gave way to stored furniture and boxes, belongings that hadn't made it into the house perhaps. A rocking horse. A disassembled crib. Items for a child. Near the back wall, Emma noticed something odd about the floorboards. While most of the barn had a pressed earth floor, this section was wooden, and unlike the rest of the structure, appeared to have been swept clean relatively recently. She knelt awkwardly, her pregnancy making the movement cumbersome, and ran her hands over the boards. One shifted slightly beneath her touch. Emma worked her fingers into the gap and pulled. The board lifted, revealing a hidden handle. "A trapdoor," she breathed. The sound of tires on gravel reached her ears. Emma froze, listening as a car door slammed, followed by footsteps approaching the barn. "Miss Sullivan?" Sheriff Mills called. "Your car's here, but you didn't answer at the house." Emma carefully lowered the floorboard back into place and stood. "In here, Sheriff." He appeared in the doorway, his expression shifting from concern to something unreadable as he surveyed the open barn. "I see you've been exploring." "Just getting acquainted with my property," Emma replied, brushing dust from her hands. "Is there a problem?" Mills stepped inside, his gaze taking in the disturbed padlock on the ground, then moving to the carvings on the beams. His jaw tightened. "Got a call from Dr. Peterson," he said, his tone deliberately casual. "He mentioned you haven't set up a prenatal appointment yet. Given your condition, he thought it prudent to check on you." Emma crossed her arms. "That's considerate, but unnecessary. I have a doctor in the city. City's a long drive if something happens unexpected." "Like?" Mills moved further into the barn, eyes cataloging every detail. He paused at the workbench, studying the cup and ledger. "Folks in town are concerned about you out here alone, especially in this particular place." "Why this place specifically?" Emma asked. "Does it have something to do with the Sullivans who disappeared?" Mills regarded her for a long moment. "How much do you know about them?" "Only what was in the newspaper clipping. Some stories are best left in the past," he said finally. "But I'm curious why you chose this property. $1 suspicious, even for a fixer-upper." The baby kicked again, hard enough to make Emma wince. Mills noticed. "You all right?" "Fine. Just active today." She moved toward the door, suddenly eager to end this conversation. "I appreciate the concern, Sheriff, but I'm managing." He nodded slowly, following her out. At the doorway, he turned for one last look at the barn's interior, his gaze lingering on the section of wooden flooring. "If you need anything, town's just a call away," he said. "And Miss Sullivan, some places on this property might be best left unexplored until you're not in a delicate condition." After he left, Emma returned to the house, the padlock with the initials JS heavy in her pocket. She placed it on her bedside table, a silent companion as she lay awake that night, thoughts circling around the trapdoor and what secrets might lie beneath the barn floor. Emma attacked the house with renewed determination, as if scrubbing away decades of dust might also clear the mounting questions in her mind. She worked methodically from room to room, emptying drawers, washing woodwork, and rearranging furniture into livable configuration. The physical labor helped calm her racing thoughts. In the master bedroom, she pulled the heavy oak dresser away from the wall to clean behind it. As she did, her foot caught on a loose floorboard. Kneeling down, Emma discovered the board wasn't just loose. It was deliberately cut to create a hiding space. "What were you hiding, Jonathan Sullivan?" she whispered, carefully lifting the board. The small cavity contained a single item, a tarnished silver frame holding a faded photograph. Emma blew off the dust and gasped. A family of 3 stood before the ranch house. The same couple from the newspaper clipping, but this image was clearer, more intimate. The man tall and solemn, the woman holding a baby bundled in a blanket. Emma's hands trembled. The woman's face wasn't merely similar to her own. It was like looking in a mirror. The same wide-set eyes, high cheekbones, even the small mole near her left eyebrow. This couldn't be coincidence. She carried the photo to the kitchen and sat at the table, studying every detail. The date stamp in the corner read June 1983, less than a year before their disappearance. On the back, faded handwriting, Jonathan, Margaret, and baby Catherine, Willow Creek Ranch. "Catherine," Emma whispered. Her mother's name. She reached for her phone with unsteady fingers and dialed a number she rarely used. After 4 rings, a familiar voice answered. "Emma, is something wrong?" "Mum," Emma said, the word feeling strange on her tongue after months of silence. "I need to ask you something. Where were you born?" A long pause. "Why are you asking this now? Please just answer the question." Her mother sighed. "Oak Ridge Memorial Hospital. You know this. But before that, Where did your parents live? My adoptive parents lived in Springfield their whole lives. I've told you this. Not them, your birth parents. An even longer silence. Emma, what's going on? Where are you calling from? Emma hesitated, then decided on directness. I'm at a place called Willow Creek Ranch. I found a photograph of a couple named Jonathan and Margaret Sullivan, with their baby daughter Catherine. The woman could be my twin. A sharp intake of breath came through the line. You need to leave that place now. So you do know about it. I know enough to tell you it's dangerous, her mother replied, voice tight with tension. My adoptive parents never told me much. Just that my birth family died in an accident and that the property they owned was troubled. Did they tell you the property is only sold for $1 and only to blood relatives? Emma pressed. Emma, listen to me. Catherine's voice had taken on an edge of panic. I had dreams about that place my entire childhood. Bad dreams. There's a reason I never tried to find it. Mom, I think I need to know the truth about where I come from. You come from me, and I raised you far away from there for good reason. A pause. How did you even find this place? Emma thought about the strange real estate listing that had appeared in her email inbox, as if by providence, exactly when she needed somewhere to hide from Mark. It found me. That's what I was afraid of, Catherine whispered. Emma, promise me you'll leave. I can't. I have nowhere else to go. And, Emma hesitated. The baby moves differently here. Stronger, like she belongs. Oh, Emma, her mother's voice broke. History is repeating. Before Emma could ask what she meant, a knock at the door interrupted them. I have to go. I'll call you back. She opened the door to find an elderly Hispanic woman with keen eyes and a weathered face. Despite the summer heat, she wore a colorfully embroidered shawl over her shoulders. You don't know me, the woman said, but I knew your grandmother. I'm Rosa Mendez. How did you? The Sullivan blood shows clear in your face. Rosa answered the unfinished question. I worked for your grandparents for many years. When I heard someone had bought the ranch, she peered at Emma's face. May I come in? Emma stepped aside. Rosa entered, her gaze sweeping the cleaned rooms with approval. You've been busy, she noted. Good. This house waited too long for family to return. Did you know them well? Emma asked, gesturing to the photograph on the table. Rosa picked it up, her expression softening. Margaret was kind to everyone. Jonathan was stern but fair. They loved this land. She looked up at Emma. And that baby grew to be your mother, yes? Catherine. Emma nodded, startled by the woman's certainty. The moment I saw you in town, I knew, Rosa said. The land called you home, just as it should. What happened to them? Rosa carefully replaced the photograph. Not all stories should be told at once. Some need time, like seeds. Her gaze dropped to Emma's belly. The baby, she is active here. Emma's hand moved instinctively to her abdomen. How did you know? The Sullivan women have always connected strongly to this land, Rosa said simply. It is their birthright, and their bird. Outside, thunder rumbled in the distance. Rosa glanced toward the window. Storm's coming, she said. I should go. At the door she turned. Come to my house tomorrow. There are things you should know before your time comes. After Rosa left, Emma stood at the window, watching storm clouds gather over the distant hills, the photograph clutched in her hand, her mother's warnings echoing in her mind. Dawn broke with the clarity that follows storms, the air washed clean, the countryside glistening. Emma had slept fitfully, her dreams filled with whispered conversations she couldn't quite hear, and faces that resembled her own. The photograph on her nightstand seemed to watch her with familiar eyes. She dressed simply loose cotton dress, comfortable shoes, her practical side reminding her that Rosa's revelations could wait, but the trapdoor in the barn had occupied her thoughts all night. The barn's interior looked different in morning light, less ominous, more like an abandoned workshop awaiting its owner's return. Emma made her way to the back where the trapdoor lay hidden. She knelt and lifted the wooden board, revealing an iron ring handle. With a deep breath, she pulled. The trapdoor opened smoothly, surprising her. No squeal of neglected hinges, no resistance from decades of disuse. Below, wooden steps descended into darkness. Emma retrieved the flashlight from her pocket and pointed it downward. The beam revealed a root cellar, walls lined with rough shelving, dirt floor tamped smooth by generations of footsteps. "Here goes nothing," she muttered, carefully navigating the steps, one hand braced protectively over her belly. The cellar was larger than she'd expected, extending well beyond the beam of her flashlight. Shelves held dusty mason jars, home-canned vegetables and fruits, their contents long since desiccated. Farm implements hung from hooks along one wall. An old wooden cabinet stood against the far wall, its surface covered with candle wax drippings. Emma approached it, drawn by something she couldn't articulate. The cabinet wasn't dusty like everything else. Someone had wiped it clean relatively recently. She pulled open the top drawer and found it empty. The second contained only a ball of twine. But when she tried the third, it stuck. "Come on," she whispered, jiggling the handle. Something about the drawer felt wrong, too shallow compared to the other. She ran her fingers along the inside edges and found a small depression. When she pressed it, a click sounded, and the false bottom popped up. Nestled in the hidden compartment lay a leather-bound journal, its cover worn smooth with handling. Emma lifted it carefully, feeling its weight, the weight of secrets of history. The front bore no title, only the initials JS burned into the leather. She carried it to a rough wooden bench and sat down, opening to the first page. "Property of Jonathan Sullivan," read the neat masculine handwriting. "Willow Creek Ranch accounts and observations, begun January 1974. Emma turned the pages slowly. The first entries were mundane: crop rotations, rainfall measurements, livestock records. But as she progressed, she noticed a change in tone. April 30, 1976, Margaret pregnant again. Doc Peterson confirms. Praying this one takes, the land seems to know already. Crops growing stronger near the house. June 17, 1976, lost another. Third time. Margaret inconsolable. The barn symbols have faded, must recarve them deeper this time. Rosa's grandmother advises caution with the old ways. But what choice do we have? September 4, 1979. Discovered the stone beneath the root cellar. Rosa says her people knew about it for generations. The markings match the symbols in the barn exactly. Coincidence? Or did the original settlers know something about this land? December 25, 1982. Catherine thrives, our miracle after so much loss. The burden and the blessing, just as Rosa's grandmother foretold. Margaret won't let the baby out of her sight. The land grows more bountiful each season, but at what cost? The final entry was dated March 15, 1984. Something has changed. The symbols in the barn glow at night now. Catherine cries when we take her far from the house. Margaret has the dreams again, says she sees what's coming. We've prepared as best we can. If anyone of Sullivan blood ever returns to this place, may they understand the choice we made. The burden passes down, always. The journal ended there the day before they vanished. Emma closed the book, mind reeling. Her hands trembled slightly as she returned the journal to its hiding place. What burden had passed down? What choice had they made? As she turned to leave, something on the far wall caught her eye. Beneath decades of cobwebs, faint lines were etched into the dirt wall, the same symbols from the barn's support beams. Emma brushed away the webs, revealing a circular pattern of interconnected symbols surrounding a central design that resembled a tree with deep, spiraling roots. As her fingers traced the central symbol, a sudden wave of dizziness washed over her. Images flooded her mind: a woman singing to a baby, a man carving symbols into wood by candlelight, a stone with ancient markings, a flash of light illuminating the barn. "Hello, Miss Sullivan?" Sheriff Mills' voice called from above, jolting her back to the present. "Rosa Mendez was concerned about you. Said I should check the property." Emma grabbed the journal and tucked it into the waistband of her dress, pulling her loose top over it. "Down here, Sheriff," she called, her voice steadier than she felt. As she climbed the stairs, she plastered a smile on her face, but her mind churned with questions that only Rosa might answer, and the weight of Jonathan Sullivan's journal pressed against her skin like a secret demanding to be told. Emma awoke with a dull headache, pulsing behind her eyes. The journal she'd found yesterday lay on her bedside table, its presence both comforting and unsettling. She'd spent half the night reading through Jonathan Sullivan's increasingly disturbing entries, searching for answers about the family's disappearance, but found only more questions. Rising slowly, she felt a strange fluttering sensation in her abdomen, different from the baby's usual movements. When she stood, a wave of dizziness forced her to sit back down. After 3 attempts with similar results, Emma grudgingly admitted she needed medical attention. The drive to town felt longer than usual, each bump in the road sending uncomfortable jolts through her body. She parked outside the small medical clinic, a modest brick building with Dr. Harold Peterson, family medicine stenciled on the frosted glass door. Inside, the waiting room was empty except for an elderly receptionist who peered at Emma over cat-eye glasses. "I don't have an appointment," Emma explained, "but I'm experiencing some concerning symptoms." The receptionist's expression softened when she noticed Emma's pregnant state. "Dr. Peterson always makes time for expectant mothers." "Name? Emma Sullivan." The woman's pencil paused mid-write. "Sullivan, you say?" "Yes, I recently bought Willow Creek Ranch." "I see." The receptionist buzzed through to the doctor's office. "Harold, there's a Sullivan woman here to see you." "Yes, expect." Minutes later, Emma found herself in an examination room that seemed frozen in time. Vintage medical equipment, anatomy charts yellowed with age, and a distinct absence of computers or modern technology. Dr. Peterson entered, older than she'd expected. Late 70s at least, with wispy white hair and hands spotted with age, but steady in their movements. His sharp blue eyes examined her face with unsettling intensity. "So you're the one who bought the old Sullivan place," he said, gesturing for her to sit on the examination table, causing quite a stir around town. "So I've gathered," Emma replied. "I'm having dizzy spells and unusual sensations." "When did these symptoms begin?" He wrapped a blood pressure cuff around her arm. "Yesterday, after..." She hesitated. "After exploring the root cellar beneath the barn." The doctor's hands stilled momentarily. "I see. And how far along are you?" 29 weeks. Dr. Peterson nodded, completing the blood pressure check. "Bit elevated, but nothing alarming. Tell me about the baby's movements." "They've been stronger since I arrived at the ranch. Yesterday, when I found a certain artifact, the baby moved so forcefully it almost hurt." "Artifact?" he asked, applying his stethoscope to her abdomen. Emma chose her words carefully. "A journal belonging to Jonathan Sullivan." The doctor's expression remained neutral, but his eyes flickered to meet hers. "The baby's heartbeat is strong, unusually so for this stage." He moved the stethoscope, and the pattern of movement. He paused. "Have you had an ultrasound recently?" "Not since I left the city." He helped her lie back on the table and wheeled over an ultrasound machine that looked at least 20 years old. "This is rather antiquated, but it works." The cold gel and pressure of the transducer were familiar, but Dr. Peterson's reaction to the screen was not. His eyebrows rose, and he adjusted settings repeatedly. "Is something wrong?" Emma asked, anxiety rising. "No, quite the contrary." He turned the screen toward her. "Your daughter appears perfectly healthy, but look here." He pointed to rhythmic pulses visible on the screen. "The fetal movement patterns are synchronized. I've only seen this once before." "With another Sullivan pregnancy?" Emma guessed. Dr. Peterson's gaze sharpened. "You've been talking to Rosa. She knew my grandparents." He nodded slowly. "I delivered your mother, you know. And before that, I attended the births of 3 Sullivan stillbirths. Your mother was the miracle, the one who survived." Emma's heart pounded. "What happened to my grandparents? Why did they disappear?" The doctor shut off the machine and helped her sit up. That's not my story to tell, but I will say this. The Sullivan women have always had a special connection to that land. It manifests differently during pregnancy. He wrote on a prescription pad, "Prenatal vitamins. Take them religiously, and come back next week." As Emma dressed, she noticed a display case in the corner containing various medical antiquities. Among them, a tarnished silver baby rattle caught her eye. Etched on its surface were symbols identical to those in the barn. "That belonged to the Sullivan family," Doc Peterson said, following her gaze. "One of the few artifacts recovered after they vanished. Been meaning to return it to the proper owner." He lifted it from the case and held it out. "I suppose that's you now." Emma took the rattle, its weight substantial for such a small object. "Did you know my grandmother well?" "Margaret was special," he said, his expression distant with memory. "She understood the land better than Jonathan ever did. Said she could hear it sometimes." He refocused on Emma. "The dizzy spell should pass in a day or so. It's just your body adjusting." "Adjusting to what?" "To the ranch, to your heritage." He held her gaze. "The Sullivans and that land have been connected for generations. It's in your blood, and now in your daughter's." In the car, Emma examined the silver rattle. Despite decades in the display case, it gleamed as if recently polished. When she shook it gently, the soft tinkling sound elicited the strongest kick yet from her baby, so pronounced that Emma gasped. "You recognize it, don't you?" she whispered to her unborn child, a mixture of wonder and apprehension washing over her. "Somehow you already know." Rosa Mendez lived on the outskirts of town, in a small adobe house, surrounded by a garden bursting with herbs and flowers. Emma recognized some as medicinal plants. Her mother had kept a similar garden when Emma was young, before they moved to the city. She knocked on the weathered wooden door, the silver rattle and Thonan's journal tucked safely in her bag. Rosa opened the door as if she'd been waiting, her keen eyes noting Emma's pale complexion. "You found something," she said, not a question but a statement of fact. "Come in." The interior was warm and fragrant, with herbs hanging from rafters and candles burning on an altar adorned with Catholic saints alongside unfamiliar symbols. Rosa gestured for Emma to sit at a sturdy kitchen table, then placed a steaming mug of tea before her. "For the dizziness," she explained. "The land's energy affects New Sullivan women strongly at first." Emma wrapped her hands around the mug. "You knew, didn't you, who I was, who my mother was, before I even showed you the photograph?" "The Sullivan blood shows clear in your face," Rosa said simply. "I knew your grandmother since we were girls. I helped deliver your mother." She studied Emma's expression. "You have questions. What happened to them? Why did they disappear?" Rosa shook her head. "Not here. Some conversations shouldn't happen within walls." She stood. "Drink your tea, then we walk." They followed a narrow path behind Rosa's house that led toward the town cemetery. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across weathered headstones. Emma noticed Rosa wouldn't meet her eyes. "The ranch has always been special ground," Rosa began, her voice low. "My people knew it before the white settlers came. A place where the veil between worlds grows thin, where life and death speak to each other." Emma remained silent, sensing Rosa needed to tell the story her own way. Jonathan Sullivan's grandfather bought that land in a prosperous at first. Crops grew like nowhere else. Livestock thrived, children born strong. But the land, it requires balance, takes as well as gives. They stopped before a section of graves, all bearing the Sullivan name. Emma's breath caught as she read the dates. Infant deaths, children lost young, lives cut short. The Sullivan men never understood, Rosa continued. Thought they owned the land, but the Sullivan women, they knew better. They learned to listen. Her weathered finger traced the air above one headstone. "Jonathan and Margaret lost 3 babies before your mother. All stillborn, perfect but silent. What happened?" Margaret's grandmother was half indigenous, taught her about the old ways, the symbols that maintain balance. After the third stillbirth, Margaret came to my grandmother, a curandera, a healer. Together they found the old stone beneath the barn. I saw a reference to it in Jonathan's journal. Rosa nodded. The stone is older than any of us. The symbols carved there, they are a pact, a covenant with the land. Margaret performed the ritual my grandmother taught her during her pregnancy with your mother. Catherine was born healthy, the miracle child, and then they disappeared, Emma prompted. Rosa's gaze grew distant. The price of the ritual became clear only later. The land's energy flowed through Margaret, through Catherine, but it grew too strong. Jonathan tried to control it, to use it for the farm's prosperity. He didn't understand the balance required. She fell silent, staring at the graves. What happened to them, Rosa? Emma pressed. The night they vanished, there was a storm like no other. Lightning struck the barn repeatedly, though nothing burned. The next morning, they were gone, vanished without a trace. Only Catherine remained, crying in her crib, surrounded by a perfect circle of those symbols drawn in ash. Rosa turned to face Emma directly. Your mother was sent to distant relatives, away from the land's influence. The property has remained empty since, waiting for Sullivan blood to return. Emma's hand went instinctively to her belly. And now I'm here, pregnant with a daughter. The cycle continues, Rosa said softly. She reached into her pocket and withdrew a small bundle wrapped in faded linen. My grandmother made this for Margaret's first baby. It should have been passed to you long ago. Emma unwrapped the bundle to reveal a delicately embroidered baby blanket. Strange symbols, the same ones from the barn, were stitched around its border in multicolored thread. Protection, Rosa explained. The land's energy grows stronger as your time approaches. The blanket helps maintain balance, keeps the child safe. Safe from what? Rosa's eyes met hers. From the choice every Sullivan woman must eventually make. The burden your grandmother carried, the one your mother fled from. What choice? Emma asked, clutching the blanket. A breeze rustled through the cemetery, stirring the leaves of the willow trees that gave the town its name. Rosa glanced up at the darkening sky. The land remembers what the people forget, she said cryptically. You'll understand when the time comes. She gently touched Emma's abdomen. She already knows. She was meant for this place, just as you were. As they walked back toward town, Emma felt the weight of generations watching her, from the gravestones behind them and from within the life growing inside her. Dark clouds massed on the horizon as Emma drove home from Rosa's house, the embroidered blanket folded carefully on the passenger seat. The radio crackled with static before the announcer's voice broke through. Severe thunderstorm warning, possible flash flooding. Residents advised to stay indoors. By the time she reached the ranch, fat raindrops were beginning to fall. Emma hurried inside, pausing on the porch to watch lightning illuminate the distant hills. The wind picked up, bending the tall grass and sending leaves swirling across the yard. There was something expectant in the air, as if the storm carried more than just rain. She secured the windows and doors, gathering candles and matches in preparation for a power outage. As she worked, her grandmother's silver rattle clinked against Jonathan's journal in her bag, a sound both comforting and eerie in the gathering gloom. The main power line went down just as darkness fell. Emma lit candles throughout the first floor, creating pools of flickering light that cast long shadows on the walls. Outside, the storm intensified, rain lashing against the windows, wind howling through cracks in the old frame, thunder rumbling almost continuously. Wrapped in a quilt on the sofa, Emma read more of Jonathan's journal by candlelight. The later entries grew increasingly erratic, filled with references to the energy growing stronger, the balance shifting, and cryptic mentions of a choice Margaret would have to make. A particularly violent thunderclap shook the house. Emma gasped as something upstairs crashed to the floor. She froze, listening intently. Footsteps creaked across the ceiling, slow, deliberate steps, moving from the master bedroom toward the nursery. "Hello," she called, her voice swallowed by another roll of thunder. Grabbing a flashlight, Emma moved cautiously toward the stairs. The footsteps had stopped, but now she heard something else. The faint sound of a woman humming a lullaby. The baby kicked forcefully, as if responding to the melody. Emma placed her hand on her belly, feeling the strong movements beneath her palm. "You hear it too, don't you?" She climbed the stairs slowly, flashlight beam dancing across the walls. The upstairs hallway was empty, but the door to the future nursery stood ajar, though Emma distinctly remembered closing it earlier. A child's cry, brief but unmistakable, came from inside the room. Emma pushed the door open wider, heart pounding. The room was empty, moonlight filtering through lace curtains that billowed in the breeze from a window that hadn't been opened before. As she moved to close it, a strange sound drew her attention to the corner of the room. An old wooden radio she hadn't noticed before sat on a small table, its dial turning by itself until it settled on a station playing music from another era. A slow, melodic song from the... Despite the power outage, despite the storm's interference, the radio played on, its warm tubes glowing in the darkness. Emma approached it cautiously. "Hello? Is someone here?" The music abruptly ceased. In the sudden silence, Emma could hear her own heartbeat, rapid and loud. Then a woman's voice, distant but clear. "Protect her. The time comes soon." The radio fell silent. Emma reached out a trembling hand to touch it, but before her fingers made contact, all the candles downstairs extinguished simultaneously. The darkness was absolute. "Margaret?" Emma whispered. "Grandmother?" No answer came, but the baby moved again, a rolling motion unlike anything Emma had felt before. She backed out of the room, fumbling with the flashlight that now refused to work. Lightning struck somewhere very close, illuminating the hallway in stark white light. In that brief flash, Emma saw a figure at the end of the corridor. A woman in a 1950s dress, her face hauntingly familiar. When darkness returned, Emma heard footsteps retreating, followed by the sound of water dripping. She made her way downstairs by feel, heart racing. In the kitchen, she found candles mysteriously relit, but water was streaming in beneath the pantry door. A door she'd never opened because it had been painted shut. Now it stood slightly ajar. The paint cracked around the frame, water seeping through from some unknown source behind it. Emma placed her palm against the wood, feeling unexpected warmth radiating through the old panels. Another flash of lightning, another crash of thunder, and the storm's fury suddenly abated. The wind died down to a whisper. Rain softened to a gentle patter. In this strange, sudden calm, Emma felt a presence not threatening but protective, watching. The baby, so active during the storm's peak, now rested quietly. Emma took a deep breath and pushed against the pantry door. Decades-old paint crackled as it swung inward, revealing not the shallow storage space she'd expected, but a narrow staircase leading down into darkness. The silver rattle in her pocket began to vibrate slightly, growing warm against her skin. From the bottom of the stairs came the faintest glow, not electric light, but something softer, more ancient. Emma placed her foot on the first step, then hesitated as her phone rang, the sound jarring in the stillness. The caller ID showed Mabel from the general store. "Emma, thank goodness. Are you all right out there?" "Yes, I'm fine," Emma replied, her voice steadier than they felt. "The storm was intense, but it seems to be passing now." "I'm coming to check on you," Mabel said, her tone brooking no argument. "No one should be alone at that property during such a storm, especially not in your condition." "That's not neck," Emma began, but Mabel had already hung up. She looked back at the revealed staircase, torn between investigating immediately and waiting. The glow from below pulsed once, then faded to darkness, as if responding to her indecision. "I'll come back," Emma whispered, to the house or to whatever waited below. She wasn't sure. "I promise." Emma paced the kitchen, torn between waiting for Mabel and exploring the hidden staircase. Curiosity finally won. She grabbed a candle and descended the narrow steps, one hand braced against the damp wall, the other cradling her belly protectively. The staircase curved downward, leading deeper than seemed possible for a house built on a relatively flat foundation. The air grew cooler, but not unpleasant, strangely fresh for a sealed space. At the bottom, the passage opened into a small room that took Emma's breath away. Unlike the dusty root cellar beneath the barn, this space had been preserved perfectly. A nursery frozen in time, pale blue wallpaper adorned with silver stars, a hand-carved wooden crib with delicate mobile hanging above, a rocking chair with a knitted throw, a changing table stocked with yellowed cloth diapers and handmade garments. Emma moved through the space in wonder, candle flame illuminating details that tugged at her heart, tiny hand-knitted booties, a silver brush and comb set, a teddy bear worn smooth with love. "My mother's nursery," she whispered. The baby kicked in response, a gentle nudge of confirmation. On a small bookshelf, leather-bound volumes of children's stories stood beside notebooks, filled with Margaret Sullivan's elegant handwriting. Observations of Catherine's first month, pressed flowers, photographs. A folded paper tucked one notebook caught Emma's eye. She opened it carefully, revealing handwritten sheet music titled, "Simply Willow's Child." The same lullaby she'd heard humming through the house during the storm. Emma hummed a few notes. Experimentally, the melody seemed to resonate within the room, and the baby responded with a flurry of movement. The silver rattle in her pocket grew warm again, and without thinking, Emma placed it in the crib. It settled against the small pillow as if it belonged there. A wooden filing cabinet stood in the corner. Emma pulled open a drawer labeled medical and found a neat stack of documents. Dr. Peterson's detailed records of Margaret's pregnancies, including the 3 stillbirths before Catherine. Reading through the notes, patterns emerged that sent chills down Emma's spine, fet movement synchronized with electromagnetic fluctuations in the area. Pregnant patient reports dreams of ancestral figures, providing guide. Unusual energy readings around the property intensify as pregnancy progresses. The most recent file contained observations about Catherine as an infant. Baby demonstrates unprecedented connection to property. When removed beyond a 5-mile radius, experiences distress. Within property boundaries, shows accelerated development and unusual awareness. The final entry was dated 1 week before the family's disappearance. Margaret reports the choice. Approach. Patient exhibits physical symptoms consistent with extreme energy absorption, luminous skin, elevated body temperature, altered brainwave patterns, concerned for both mother and child. Sullivan insists they have found a solution through the old ways, advised against any untested procedures. Emma sat in the rocking chair, documents trembling in her hands. The same symptoms Dr. Peterson had noted in her own examination. The same pattern of unusual fetal movement, history repeating itself. Just as Rosa had said, as she rocked gently, a strange sensation washed over her. Not the dizziness from before, but a shifting of perception. The candle flame stretched and danced though no breeze stirred the air. The walls seemed to breathe. Then, like a film overlaid on reality, Emma saw a vision of the room as it once was. Margaret Sullivan in this very chair, rocking infant Catherine, singing the lullaby softly. Jonathan stood in the doorway, face lined with worry. The vision, Margaret looked up, directly at Emma, and for a breathtaking moment, their eyes met across time. "Protect her," Margaret's lips formed the words without sound. "Complete the cycle." The vision faded, leaving Emma gasping. The baby rolled within her womb, pressing outward as if reaching for something. The rattle in the crib began to vibrate subtly, its silver surface catching the candlelight. From upstairs came the sound of knocking, then Mabel's voice calling her name. Emma gathered the sheet music and one of the medical documents, tucking them into her pocket before ascending the stairs. She found Mabel in the kitchen, soaking wet from the rain, eyes wide as she took in the open pantry door and the staircase beyond. "You found it," Mabel whispered. "The sanctuary room. You knew about this?" Emma asked, suddenly wary. "I helped Margaret prepare it," Mabel replied, her expression unreadable. "For your mother's protection, and now it appears again for your daughter." She gestured to Emma's belly. "The land knows its own." "What does that mean?" "It means you need to prepare," Mabel said, her voice taking on a new urgency. "The storm tonight was just the beginning. I wasn't sure until now, but finding this room, it confirms everything." "Confirms what?" Mabel's eyes reflected the candlelight. "That you're the one who can restore the balance. The one who can finish what your grandmother started." She reached into her bag and pulled out a small brass key. "There's something else you need to see. Something I've kept safe for 40 years. Emma and Mabel sat at the kitchen table, the small brass key between them like a tangible secret. Candles cast long shadows on the walls, the storm having left them without electricity. Mabel's clothes were still damp, but she had refused Emma's offer of dry ones, insisting that what she had to say couldn't wait. "Margaret Sullivan was my best friend since childhood," Mabel began, her weathered hands wrapped around a steaming mug of tea. "We shared everything, hopes, dreams, fears. When she married Jonathan and moved to this ranch, I thought I'd lost her to domesticity." A sad smile crossed her face. "But then the troubles began." "The stillbirths," Emma said. Mabel nodded. 3 perfect babies, all born silent. It nearly destroyed her. Jonathan threw himself into working the land, as men often do with grief. But Margaret, she started researching her family history, her grandmother's indigenous roots. Rosa mentioned something about that. Rosa's grandmother and Margaret's grandmother were connected. Both knew the old ways, the old stories about this land. Mabel's voice lowered. "This valley was sacred ground long before settlers arrived. The soil here, it's different. Things grow stronger, faster. Lives burn brighter." She gestured toward Emma's abdomen. "Especially new lives. What does that have to do with my family disappearing?" Mabel sighed deeply. "The land's energy affects the women who live here, particularly during pregnancy." Margaret discovered that her ancestors had learned to channel this energy, to work with it rather than against it. After the 3rd stillbirth, she was desperate. She found an old ritual, something her grandmother had hinted at, but never fully explained. "The symbols in the barn," Emma said. "The stone beneath the root cellar." "Yes." Margaret performed the ritual during her pregnancy with Catherine. "It worked. Your mother was born healthy, thriving. But there was a cost." Mabel paused, gathering herself. "The ritual created a bond between Margaret, Catherine, and the land, an unbreakable connection that grew stronger each day. And that's why they disappeared?" "In a way," Mabel replied cryptically. "The energy continued to build within Margaret. By Catherine's 1st birthday, strange things were happening. Crops growing overnight, animals behaving oddly, objects moving on their own. Margaret began to glow from within, especially during storms. She met Emma's eyes directly. "Like you did tonight. I saw it when I arrived. Your skin luminescent, your eyes reflecting light that wasn't there." Emma's hand went instinctively to her face. "I don't understand. The land's energy flows through the Sullivan bloodline now. It's seeking balance. The ritual Margaret performed created an imbalance that has remained unresolved for 40 years. Mabel reached across the table to take Emma's hand. "You're the first Sullivan woman to return. The land called you back to complete what Margaret started." "What exactly did she start?" Emma asked, a tremor in her voice. "A covenant with the land. A bargain." Mabel withdrew her hand and picked up the brass key. "This opens a safety deposit box at the Willow Creek Bank. Inside is everything Margaret left behind. Legal documents, letters to Catherine she never sent, and instructions for you, should you ever return. For me, but she couldn't have known. Margaret had visions near the end. She saw you, Emma. She knew someday her granddaughter would return, carrying the next Sullivan daughter. Mabel pressed the key into Emma's palm. There's more. The property deed has a special covenant. It can only be sold for $1 and only to someone of Sullivan blood. That's why it remained empty all these years waiting. Emma stared at the key. Why didn't my mother ever come back? Catherine was only an infant when it happened. Her adoptive parents, distant relatives of Jonathan's, were told only that there had been an accident. They raised her far from here, likely never knowing the full truth. Mabel hesitated. I tried to find her over the years, but records were sealed. By the time I located her, she was grown, with a family of her own. My mother has nightmares about this place, Emma said quietly. She begged me to leave when I told her where I was. She may not remember consciously, but some part of her knows. Mabel stood and moved to the window, looking out at the moonlit landscape. The storm has cleared, but there will be others. Stronger ones, as your time approaches. My time, your delivery, the baby. Mabel turned back to Emma. The land's energy will peak when your daughter is born. That's when you'll face the same choice Margaret did. What choice? Emma demanded, frustrated by the cryptic responses from both Rosa and now Mabel, whether to complete the covenant or break it, whether to embrace the land's power or reject it. Mabel's voice softened. I can't tell you what to choose, only that there are consequences either way. Did my grandmother choose wrong? Is that why they vanished? Mabel shook her head slowly. They didn't vanish, Emma, at least not in the way people think. She gathered her coat, preparing to leave. Go to the bank tomorrow, read Margaret's letters, then you'll understand. At the door, Mabel paused. One more thing, your mother should be here for the birth. Whatever happened in the past, whatever fears she carries, she's part of this too. After Mabel left, Emma stood in the doorway, watching taillights disappear down the long driveway. The night was unnaturally clear after the storm, stars blazing overhead. A cool breeze carried the scent of rain-soaked earth, and something else, a sweetness she couldn't identify. Emma looked down at the brass key in her palm, then up at the vast sky. Somewhere in the distance, coyotes began to howl, a sound both mournful and expectant, as if announcing a change on the wind. Morning arrived with crystalline clarity, the storm's passage leaving behind a freshly washed world. Emma dressed carefully, the brass key cool against her palm as she drove into town. Willow Creek Bank stood on the corner of Main Street, a modest brick building with an antiquated facade that suggested little had changed since the night. Inside, the bank manager, a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses, regarded Emma with poorly disguised suspicion as she presented the key. This opens a safety deposit box, she explained. I believe it's been held here for some time. The manager examined the key, then Emma's face, recognition dawning in his eyes. You're the Sullivan woman who bought the old ranch. Yes, Emma Sullivan. He disappeared into a back office. Through the partially open door, Emma heard him making a phone call, his voice too low to discern the words. Minutes later, he returned with a ledger. This box has been maintained with prepaid fees since 1984, he informed her. I'll need to see some identification before granting access. As Emma presented her driver's license, the bank's front door opened. Sheriff Mills entered, nodding to the manager, before approaching Emma. Miss Sullivan, he greeted her. Frank here called me as a precaution. That box has some sensitive history attached to it. Is there some legal reason I shouldn't access it? Emma asked, suddenly wary. The sheriff and manager exchanged glances. No, Mills admitted. But given the circumstances of your family's disappearance and certain unusual provisions in their estate, I thought it prudent to be present when the box is opened. Emma sensed she had little choice. Fine. The manager led them to a small room lined with metal boxes. He inserted a master key alongside Emma's brass key, turning both simultaneously. The box, larger than Emma had expected, slid from the wall. I'll give you privacy, the manager said, withdrawing. Sheriff Mills remained, positioning himself by the door. Standard procedure, he claimed, though Emma suspected otherwise. She opened the box and found several document envelopes. each neatly labeled in elegant handwriting she recognized from the journals in the hidden nursery. The first contained birth certificates, her mother's, showing Margaret and Jonathan Sullivan as parents, and surprisingly, Emma's own, with Catherine listed as mother, but the father's name redacted. "You knew who I was," Emma said, looking up at the sheriff. "When I bought the property," Mills nodded once. "It was my responsibility to execute certain aspects of your grandparents' will. Finding you wasn't easy, so it wasn't coincidence that the real estate listing found me. Nothing about that property is coincidental, Miss Sullivan." Emma continued through the documents, finding the property deed next. The legal language was complex, but several clauses stood out starkly. "This property shall remain in Sullivan possession in perpetuity. Should the property be vacated, it shall be held in trust until a blood descendant of the Sullivan line returns to claim it. The property may only be transferred for the symbolic sum of $1, and only to a proven Sullivan descendant." A handwritten note was paperclipped to the deed. "The land chooses its caretakers. The price is symbolic because the true cost is paid in other ways." The next envelope contained a stack of letters addressed to "My dearest Catherine," each chronicling Margaret's thoughts as her daughter grew, though none had ever been mailed. The final letter, dated the day before the disappearance, made Emma's breath catch. "My precious daughter, by the time you might read this, the choice will have been made. Know that we did not abandon you. We transformed to protect you. The covenant with the land demands balance. Energy neither created nor destroyed, only changed in form. Your daughter will return someday. She will understand what you could not. The cycle must be completed." The last envelope held a sealed letter addressed simply, "To my granddaughter, when she returned." Emma's hands trembled as she opened it. "If you are reading this, you have returned to the land that is your birthright. You carry the next Sullivan daughter, as I foresaw. The energy builds within you, as it did within me. You feel it, the connection to the land, the strange dreams, the way your child responds to the old symbols. By now, Rosa, or Mabel, will have told you fragments of our story. Here is the truth. The ritual I performed saved your mother, but created an imbalance. The land's energy grew too strong, too fast. Jonathan tried to control it, to use it. I knew better. The land is not ours to command. When the power threatened to consume us all, I made the only choice I could. Jonathan and I became part of the land itself. Our energy merged with its essence, not gone, just transformed. The same choice awaits you when your daughter is born. Complete the covenant by acknowledging the land's power and establishing balance, or reject it and risk the consequences. The hidden room, the symbols, the silver rattle, all tools to help you prepare. Trust your instincts. The Sullivan women have always known what to do, even when we fear the knowing. With eternal love, your grandmother Margaret. Emma sat back, letter clutched in her hand, mind reeling. Not dead or missing, transformed, became part of the land itself. The strange presences she'd felt, the woman in the storm, the voice on the radio. Margaret had been there all along. "Did you know?" she asked Sheriff Mills, who had remained silent throughout. "Not the details," he replied carefully. "Just that Jonathan and Margaret left explicit instructions about the property and their daughter's care, and that someday someone would return." His expression softened slightly. "You're the first Sullivan to set foot on that land in 40 years. Things are already changing. Crops growing in abandoned fields. The old orchard suddenly blossoming out of season." Emma gathered the documents, her decision made. "I need to call my mother." 3 days after Emma's discovery at the bank, a rental car pulled up the long driveway of Willow Creek Ranch. Emma watched from the porch as her mother emerged. Catherine Wilson, née Sullivan, returned to the place of her birth after 40 years. Catherine stood beside the car for a long moment, her face pale, gaze fixed on the house as if confronting a ghost. She was a slender woman in her early 40s, with streaks of premature grey in her dark hair and the same high cheekbones and wide-set eyes that marked the Sullivan women. "You shouldn't have come back here," were her first words as she approached the porch. No greeting, no embrace, just raw fear disguised as anger. "Hello to you too, Mom," Emma replied softly. Catherine's expression softened as she took in her daughter's pregnant form. "You look just like her," she whispered. Standing there on the porch, "It's like seeing a photograph come to life. You remember?" "Not consciously. But seeing this place," Catherine shuddered. "The dreams I've had all my life, they were memories, weren't they?" Emma nodded. "Come inside. There's a lot to talk about." Catherine hesitated at the threshold, visibly steeling herself before stepping through the doorway. Inside, her eyes darted around the renovated rooms, recognition and confusion warring on her face. "It's the same, but different," she murmured. "I remembered pieces, the rocking chair, the quilt on the wall." She stopped abruptly. "I'm not going to the barn or the basement." "I wouldn't ask you to," Emma assured her. "Not yet, anyway." They settled in the kitchen with tea. Emma had spread the documents from the safety deposit box on the table, the birth certificates, the deed, the letters. Catherine stared at them without touching, as if they might burn her. "You were only a year old when it happened," Emma said gently. "But I think part of you remembers." "Nightmares," Catherine admitted. "All my life, dreams of glowing symbols, a woman singing who turns to light, the ground opening up." She wrapped her arms around herself. "My adoptive parents never told me much, just that there had been an accident, that the property was held in trust for me but was dangerous somehow. They didn't vanish or die, Mom. They transformed." Emma pushed Margaret's final letter toward her mother. "Grandmother left this for me." "For us, really?" Catherine made no move to take it. "I spent my entire adult life running from this place, from these feelings I couldn't explain. When I found out I was pregnant with you, the dreams got worse. I knew, somehow, that you would be drawn back here. Is that why you never told me about my heritage? About being adopted?" "I was protecting you," Catherine's voice cracked. "The same way my adoptive parents protected me, by keeping me away from here." Emma reached across the table, placing her hand over her mother's. "But we're Sullivan women. The land is part of us, whether we acknowledge it or not." Catherine withdrew her hand. "I'm not a Sullivan. I've been Catherine Wilson longer than I was ever Catherine Sullivan. And yet you came when I called, because I'm your mother, because I couldn't let you face this alone." Catherine finally picked up one of the letters, the earliest one Margaret had written her. "She says here she loved me, that everything she did was to protect me." "I believe that's true," Emma said softly. Catherine read in silence, tears gradually forming in her eyes. When she looked up, decades of buried grief had risen to the surface. "I want to hate her for leaving me, but I can't. Not after reading this." Emma hesitated, then reached into her pocket and withdrew a small object, a carved wooden horse, its paint faded but still distinguishable. "I found this in the hidden nursery. I think it might have been yours." Catherine's breath caught. Her hand moved automatically to take the toy, fingers tracing its familiar contours. "Mr. Gallopy," she whispered, the childhood name emerging from somewhere deep in her memory. I remember him. My mother, would move him across my blanket, making galloping sounds to make me laugh. The simple toy broke through barriers that documents and explanations couldn't penetrate. Catherine clutched it to her chest, tears flowing freely now. "I have dreams about this place too," Emma admitted. "But they're not nightmares. They're more like guidance. I think grandmother's trying to help me prepare." "Prepare for what?" Catherine asked, dread in her voice. The same choice she faced. "When the baby comes." Catherine stood abruptly, pacing the kitchen. "That's why we need to leave. Now, before it's too late. Before you get pulled into whatever happened to them. Mom, I'm 8 months pregnant. I can't just... We'll find a hospital in the city. Somewhere far from here." Catherine's voice took on a desperate edge. "Once the baby is born, we never have to come back," Emma sighed. "It doesn't work that way. I've seen the medical records. The Sullivan babies born away from this land. They didn't survive. There were 3 before you. Grandmother found a way to work with the land's energy, not against it. That's why you lived. And look what it cost her," Catherine cried. "A price she was willing to pay," Emma said gently. "For you." Catherine stared out the window at the barn in the distance, her body tense with conflicting instincts, the urge to flee battling with something deeper, more primal. I told myself I'd never spend another night in this house, she said finally. But I can't leave you here alone, can I? Stay, Emma urged. Help me understand. We can face this together. After a long silence, Catherine turned back. One night. I'll stay one night. But I'm not going near that barn, or the basement. And if I say we're leaving, we're leaving. No arguments. Emma nodded, knowing it was the best she could hope for. As they moved Catherine's overnight bag to the guest room, neither mentioned how the house seemed to brighten around them, as if welcoming the return of another Sullivan woman home. Sleep eluded both Sullivan women that night. Emma lay awake, listening to her mother's restless movements in the guest room across the hall. Round midnight, Catherine finally settled into silence. Emma had just begun to drift off when a sound from outside caught her attention. Soft footsteps crossing the yard. She rose carefully, her pregnant body protesting the movement, and went to the window. In the moonlight, she saw a figure moving through the garden. Rosa, kneeling in the soil, gathering something into a small basket. Emma dressed quickly and made her way downstairs, careful not to wake her mother. The night air carried a hint of autumn crispness as she stepped outside, drawing her cardigan tighter around her shoulders. "You should be sleeping," Rosa said, without looking up as Emma approached. "So should you," Emma replied. "What are you collecting at this hour?" Rosa held up a small plant with delicate white flowers that seemed to glow in the moonlight. Wild evening primrose, most potent when gathered under the full moon. She added it to her basket, which Emma now saw contained various herbs and flowers. "For your time. It comes soon. My delivery," Emma guessed. Rosa nodded, rising stiffly to her feet. "I felt the change in the air tonight. Catherine has returned. The circle begins to complete. She's terrified of this place," Emma said. "Of what it might do to me, to the baby. Fear is natural. She remembers more than she knows." Rosa nodded toward the house. "Light in the kitchen. Your mother is awake again." Sure enough, Emma could see the warm glow of the kitchen light. They walked back together, finding Catherine at the table, hands wrapped around a steaming mug, eyes haunted. "I couldn't sleep," she explained unnecessarily. Her gaze fell on Rosa, recognition dawning. "I know you. Rosa Mendez," the older woman introduced herself. "I helped bring you into this world, Catherine Sullivan." "Wilson," Catherine corrected automatically. "I haven't been Sullivan since I was a year old." Names change. "Blood remains." Rosa set her basket on the table and began arranging the herbs. "You remember more now that you're back on the land." Catherine's hands trembled slightly. "Dreams, a woman singing. This kitchen, but different." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "And something in the barn. Something that glows." Emma and Rosa exchanged glances. "The stone," Emma said gently. "Beneath the root cellar." Catherine shook her head sharply. "I don't want to know." "You already know," Rosa countered. "Your body remembers, even if your mind refuses." The three women fell into silence, the kitchen filling with the aromatic scent of herbs as Rosa worked with practiced hands, separating stems, leaves, and flowers. Finally, Catherine broke the quiet. "My adoptive mother used to make teas like that," she said, watching Rosa's movements. "She never told me where she learned it." "From Margaret," Rosa replied. "Your birth mother taught many women in town about the healing properties of plants. She was gifted that way." She handed Catherine a sprig of lavender. "You used to reach for this as a baby. It calmed you." Catherine took it reflexively, fingers crushing the flowers slightly, releasing their scent. Something shifted in her expression, a softening around the eyes. "I remember a garden behind the house, rows of plants with little wooden markers. Your mother's medicinal garden," Rosa confirmed. "It's overgrown now, but many of the perennials still grow." "The land remembers too." Emma watched her mother's face, seeing the conflict there, resistance warring with remembrance, fear battling curiosity. "Mum," she said softly, "tell us about your dreams." Catherine was quiet for a long moment, her fingers still working the lavender sprig. "I dream of a woman who becomes light," she finally said. "She holds me, sings to me, then one day she dissolves, becomes part of everything around her." Her voice grew strained. And a man who tried to stop it. Who screamed as the light took him too. Rosa nodded solemnly. You witnessed the transformation. You were too young to understand. Transformation into what? Catherine demanded. Into the land itself, Emma answered. They didn't die or disappear, Mom. They became part of Willow Creek Ranch. Their energy merged with the property. That's impossible, Catherine whispered, but without conviction. You felt them, Rosa said. All your life in your dreams. And now, back on the land, you feel them more strongly. Catherine didn't deny it. Is that what will happen to Emma? To my grandchild? Is that the choice these letters keep mentioning? The choice is not what you fear, Rosa assured her. Margaret found a way to establish balance without the sacrifice Jonathan made. But she couldn't complete it alone. She looked meaningfully at Emma's pregnant form. 3 generations are needed. Grandmother, mother, child. That's why I needed to come back, Emma realized. And why you need to be here, Mom. We're meant to finish what Grandmother started. No. Catherine stood abruptly. I won't lose you, too. You won't lose me, Emma promised, reaching for her mother's hand. But I need to understand what happened here. We both do. Rosa began gathering the sorted herbs into small bundles, tying them with twine. Dawn approaches. We should all rest. She handed a small muslin pouch to Catherine. Keep this near while you sleep. It will help with the dreams, not to stop them, but to guide them toward understanding rather than fear. After Rosa left, mother and daughter sat in silence as the first pale light of dawn crept through the windows. Finally, Catherine spoke, her voice small but resolute. Show me the garden. The one I remember. Emma smiled, hope blossoming like the wild primrose under moonlight. First thing tomorrow, morning brought tentative peace between mother and daughter. They walked the overgrown medicinal garden together, Catherine pointing out plants she somehow remembered. Echinacea there. Valerian along that fence. My mother used yarrow for fever. With each identification, Catherine's voice grew more confident, her posture less rigid. By midday, she had filled a basket with herbs she insisted on drying properly. The way my mother did, the possessive pronouns slipping out naturally. Over lunch, Emma broached the subject they'd been avoiding. I need to show you something in the barn cellar. Catherine set down her fork, tension returning to her shoulders. Emma, I told you, I know what you said. But there's something there that concerns all of us. You, me, and the baby. Emma reached across the table. I'll be right beside you. We can leave any time you want. After long consideration, Catherine nodded once, the movement so slight Emma almost missed it. The barn door creaked open under Emma's hand, revealing the shadowy interior. Catherine paused at the threshold, her breathing shallow. I remember this place, she whispered. The smell of hay and wood. The light through the roof slats. Her gaze traveled upward to the support beams. The symbols. You remember them? Emma asked, surprised, not consciously until now. But seeing them, Catherine traced the air, following the pattern of one carved symbol. He carved them, my father. By lamplight, singing under his breath, they approached the trapdoor together. Catherine's steps grew increasingly reluctant as Emma lifted the wooden panel, revealing the stairs down. We don't have to, Emma began. Yes, we do. Catherine squared her shoulders. You're right. I need to see. The cellar was cooler than Emma remembered, the air charged with something like static electricity. Their flashlight beams cut through the gloom, illuminating the shelves of preserves, the farm implements, the wooden cabinet where Emma had found Jonathan's journal. It's here, Emma said, moving toward the far wall where she'd discovered the symbols beneath the cobwebs. She brushed away new webs that had formed, revealing the circular pattern etched into the packed earth. Catherine stopped several feet away, her face pale in the flashlight's glow. I remember, she said, her voice barely audible. They brought me here. The night it happened. What do you remember? Emma asked gently. Light, singing, my mother holding me, then setting me in the center of something. Catherine pointed to the floor beneath their feet. There was more here. They moved something. Emma knelt, examining the packed earth floor. Near the center of the cellar, the dirt appeared different, disturbed more recently than the rest. Help me, she said, setting the flashlight aside. Together they scraped at the soil with a small gardening trowel Emma had brought. 6 inches down, they encountered resistance, something solid. As they cleared more dirt, the object took shape, a flat stone about 3 feet across, its surface covered with the same symbols that adorned the barn beams and the embroidered blanket Rosa had given her. The stone beneath the root cellar, Emma breathed. Recalling Jonathan's journal entry, Catherine's hands trembled as she helped clear the remaining dirt. I remember this. They placed me on it. My mother. She was glowing. Her voice caught. I thought it was just dreams all these years. As the stone was fully revealed, Emma noticed something odd. The symbols weren't carved into it as she'd first thought. They appeared to be part of the stone itself, as if they had formed naturally with the rock. More striking still, they seemed to pulse faintly with inner light, visible even in the dim cellar. It's warm, Catherine said in wonder, her palm hovering above the surface without quite touching it. And humming? A low vibration was indeed emanating from the stone, felt more than heard. Emma placed her hand directly on one of the symbols, a spiraling tree with deep roots. Instantly, warmth flowed up her arm, and the baby kicked forcefully. It knows you, Catherine whispered. Both of you. The moment was interrupted by footsteps above, then Rosa's voice calling down. Emma, Catherine, are you down there? Here! Emma called back. Rosa appeared at the bottom of the stairs, unsurprised to find them with the uncovered stone. So you found it, she said simply. Sooner than I expected. You knew it was here, Catherine said accusingly. Of course. I helped your mother uncover it the first time. Rosa approached slowly with reverence. My people have known about this stone for generations. The settlers built the barn on top of it, not understanding what it was. And what exactly is it? Emma asked. A nexus point. A place where the energies of the land converge. Rosa knelt beside them, her old joints protesting. The symbols aren't carved, they emerge when the stone is in the presence of those connected to it. The Sullivan women, Catherine guessed. Rosa nodded. Your grandmother on her mother's side was from my people. She understood what this place was, what it meant. That knowledge passed to your mother and through her to you. She looked at Emma. And now to your daughter. The journal mentioned a ritual, Emma said. Something Margaret did during her pregnancy with Mom. A way to connect the unborn child to the land's energy, ensuring a healthy birth. But it created an imbalance. Rosa traced one of the symbols without touching the stone. Your parents tried to correct it. Jonathan thought he could control the power, channel it. Margaret knew better. She understood it had to flow freely in balance. So they became part of it? Catherine asked, her voice unsteady. They merged their energy with the land, Rosa confirmed. A transformation, not a death. Part of them remains here, watching over the property, waiting. For us, Emma said softly. For the 3 generations to come together. Catherine's hand moved unconsciously to her daughter's belly. The baby is the key, Rosa finished. Born of Sullivan blood on Sullivan land, with both mother and grandmother present. She will complete the circle your mother began. Above them, the barn door creaked open again, followed by heavy footsteps. Sheriff Mills appeared at the top of the stairs, his expression grim. Storm's coming, he announced. Bad one. Just like 40 years ago. The sky darkened prematurely as they made their way back to the house, clouds massing on the horizon like an advancing army. Sheriff Mills insisted on staying, his weathered face betraying more concern than his measured words. Power will go first, he predicted, helping Emma gather candles and emergency supplies. Then the phones. Road to town floods quickly these days. Catherine paced the kitchen, casting nervous glances at the gathering storm. It's happening again, she murmured. Just like before. Not exactly like before, Rosa countered, arranging her herbs on the kitchen table. This time we're prepared. Emma felt a strange calm descend over her as they secured the house against the coming tempest. The baby moved within her, stronger and more deliberate than ever before. In the basement, she and Catherine found a collection of journals hidden behind a loose brick in the wall. 5 leather-bound volumes, each bearing a woman's name. Elizabeth Sullivan, 1891. Mary Sullivan, 1916. Grace Sullivan, 1942. Helen Sullivan, 1964. And Margaret Sullivan, 1983. 5 generations, Emma breathed, running her fingers over the embossed names. All Sullivan women. They brought the journals upstairs, spreading them across the dining table. Each volume chronicled a Sullivan woman's experiences with the property, their pregnancies, and their unique connection to the land. A pattern emerged. Each generation faced a choice about how to interact with the energy of the place. Some embraced it, using it for healing and prosperity. Others rejected it, often with tragic consequences. Elizabeth, the first Sullivan woman, wrote of discovering the stone and learning its power from the indigenous people who still lived nearby. Mary described using the energy to heal the sick during the influenza pandemic. Grace wrote of trying to suppress the connection, resulting in crop failures and her husband's early death. Helen embraced it cautiously, finding balance until her daughter Margaret's 3rd pregnancy. Margaret's journal was the most detailed, documenting her desperate search for a way to save her 4th pregnancy after losing 3 babies. "I performed the ritual as Rosa's grandmother instructed," she wrote. "The stone responded, glowing beneath my palm. Catherine moved within me, stronger than any child before. I knew then that she would live, that the land had accepted her as its own. What I didn't understand was the price that would come due." Catherine read the words aloud, her voice breaking. "She saved me." But the energy continued to build, growing stronger each day of my childhood. Jonathan believed he could harness it, use it to make the farm prosperous beyond imagination. I remember him arguing with Mother, insisting they had been given a gift they should use. "But Margaret knew better," Emma said softly. "She understood it wasn't a gift to be used, but a responsibility to be balanced." Thunder boomed overhead, rattling the windows. The first heavy raindrops pelted the roof as Sheriff Mills completed his circuit of the property. "Barns secured," he reported. "But there's something different out there. The air feels charged, like before a lightning strike, but constant. It's responding to their presence," Rosa said, nodding toward Catherine and Emma, "to 3 generations of Sullivan women under one roof again." Emma felt a sudden cramp, mild but unmistakable. Her hand went instinctively to her belly. "It's starting," Rosa observed calmly. "Earlier than expected, but the land has its own timing. The baby." "Now?" Catherine's voice rose in panic. "We need to get to a hospital." Sheriff Mills shook his head. "Roads are already flooding. No way to get to town now." "It's better this way," Rosa assured them. "This child belongs to the land. She should be born here, like her grandmother before her." Another cramp seized Emma, stronger this time. "I think Rosa's right," she gasped. "She's coming. And she's not waiting for us to decide." As if in response, the lights flickered once and died, plunging the house into premature twilight. Outside, the storm intensified, wind howling around the eaves like a living thing. Catherine lit candles with shaking hands, while Rosa calmly prepared the bedroom for delivery, laying out clean linens and her herbs. Between contractions, Emma sorted through the journals, seeking understanding. Each Sullivan woman had faced a moment of decision, whether to embrace the land's energy or reject it, whether to use it or honor it. Those who sought to control it suffered. Those who worked in partnership with it thrived. "The choice," Emma murmured, understanding finally dawning. "It's not whether to accept the power or not. It's how we relate to it, as masters or as caretakers." Catherine sat beside her daughter, uncharacteristically quiet. "I ran from it," she finally said. "All my life, running from what I am, from where I came from. Maybe if I hadn't—" "You did what you thought was right," Emma assured her, gripping her hand as another contraction came and went. "You protected me the best way you knew how. And now," Catherine asked, fear and resolution warring in her eyes. "Now we stop running," Emma said with certainty. "We face what we are, what this place is, together." She looked from her mother to Rosa to the sheriff, 3 people connected by decades of shared history and secrets. I need to understand exactly what happened the night my grandparents transformed. I need to know what choice I'm facing when this baby comes. Rosa nodded solemnly. It's time you knew everything. She glanced toward the window, where lightning illuminated the barn, a silent sentinel in the storm. But first, we must prepare for a birth, and possibly a transformation. The storm reached its full fury as night fell. Wind screamed around the old house, rain lashed the windows, and lightning struck so frequently that the bedroom where Emma labored was rarely in darkness. Her contractions had intensified, coming now in powerful waves that left her gasping. Rosa moved with practiced efficiency, arranging supplies and whispering encouragement. Sheriff Mills had retreated to the kitchen, keeping watch over the property, his presence a reassuring anchor amid the chaos. Catherine remained by her daughter's side, her initial fear gradually replaced by a strange, calm resolve. "Your grandmother gave birth in this very room," Rosa told Emma as she wiped her brow with a cool cloth. "During a storm much like this one. Was it always storms?" Emma managed between contractions. "The land speaks in many voices," Rosa replied. "But yes, for the Sullivan women, it has always been storms." Another contraction gripped Emma, stronger than before. She clutched her mother's hand, riding the wave of pain. "The spring," Catherine said suddenly, looking at Rosa. "We need water from the spring." Rosa's eyebrows rose in surprise. "You remember?" "Not consciously, but yes, there's a spring on the property." "The water, it helps." Catherine turned to Emma. "I don't know how I know this." "Your body remembers what your mind forgot," Rosa said. She handed Catherine a blue glass bottle. "The spring is behind the barn, beneath the old willow tree. The path will be muddy, but you must go now before her labor progresses further." Catherine hesitated, looking from the bottle to her daughter. "I can't leave her." "You must," Rosa insisted. 3 generations are needed, each with their role to play. She touched Catherine's cheek gently. "Your mother prepared the way. Emma will bring new life. Your task is to connect them, past and future." After another moment's hesitation, Catherine nodded. She pressed a kiss to Emma's forehead. "I'll be right back." Sheriff Mills accompanied Catherine into the storm, both of them bent against the wind. Through the window, Emma watched their flashlight beams disappear toward the barn. "Tell me," she gasped, as another contraction subsided. "What really happened to my grandparents?" Rosa adjusted the embroidered blanket beneath Emma's head. The ritual Margaret performed during her pregnancy created a bond between her, Catherine, and the land. But it was incomplete, a beginning without an ending. The energy continued to build, year after year. Jonathan tried to harness it, Emma recalled from the journals. Yes, he saw it as power to be used, controlled. Rosa's face darkened. He built devices, experiments, tried to channel the energy into the fields, the livestock. For a time it seemed to work. Crops grew abundantly, animals thrived. But the balance shifted. The land began to resist the night they disappeared. The storm came suddenly without warning. Lightning struck the barn repeatedly, though nothing burned. Margaret understood before Jonathan did. The land was reclaiming its energy, seeking balance. Rosa's eyes grew distant with memory. She took Catherine to the stone, placed her safely at its center, where she would be protected. Jonathan tried to stop her, to maintain his control. But Margaret had made her choice. To become part of the land, Emma whispered. Rosa nodded. She accepted transformation rather than destruction. Jonathan fought it until the end, but the energy had grown too strong. When the storm cleared, both were gone. Only Catherine remained, crying in her crib, surrounded by symbols drawn in ash. The door flew open, admitting a gust of wind and rain. Catherine stumbled in, soaked to the skin, but clutching the blue bottle now filled with clear water. "The spring," she gasped. "It's changed, glowing, and I saw—" She shook her head, unable to articulate what she'd witnessed. Rosa took the bottle, uncorking it carefully. The water inside seemed to shimmer with an inner light. She helped Emma drink, the liquid cool and sweet, unlike any water she'd ever tasted. Immediately, something shifted within her. The pain didn't lessen. but transformed, becoming purposeful rather than merely overwhelming. "Now," Rosa instructed Catherine, "place your hands here." She guided Catherine's palms to rest on Emma's belly. "Connect the generations." As Catherine's hands settled on her daughter's abdomen, Emma felt a surge of energy flow through her, from the land, through her mother, into her own body, and down to the child preparing to enter the world. The room seemed to brighten, though the candles remained unchanged. "She's coming," Rosa announced. "Now, Emma, push!" The next hour passed in a blur of sensation. Pain and power intermingled, the storm outside matching the intensity within. Emma found herself drawing strength from sources she couldn't name, from her mother's steady presence, from Rosa's ancient wisdom, from the land itself pulsing beneath the house. As her daughter finally emerged into Rosa's waiting hands, a bolt of lightning struck so close that the windows rattled in their frames. In that brilliant flash, Emma saw them, spectral figures standing at the foot of the bed, a woman with her face, a solemn man beside her, Margaret and Jonathan, watching as their great-granddaughter took her first breath. The baby's cry rose clear and strong above the storm's diminishing rumble. Rosa wrapped her in the embroidered blanket, the symbols now glowing faintly against the fabric. "Perfect," she pronounced, placing the infant in Emma's arms. A true Sullivan daughter. The storm ended as abruptly as it had begun. One moment, wind and rain lashed the windows. The next, stillness descended, stars appearing through breaks in the clouds. Catherine stood at the window, tears streaming silently down her face. "They're still here," she whispered. "I can feel them." Emma looked down at her daughter, taking in the delicate features that somehow held echoes of 5 generations of Sullivan women. The baby's eyes opened, alert, aware in a way newborns shouldn't be, and fixed on her mother's face with unmistakable recognition. "Welcome to Willow Creek Ranch," Emma murmured, feeling the circle of her life closing and opening simultaneously. "Welcome home." 1 year later, the transformation of Willow Creek Ranch was nothing short of miraculous. Fields that had lain fallow for decades now burst with organic crops. The orchard, once overgrown and neglected, bent under the weight of perfect fruit. Wildflowers carpeted meadows where only weeds had grown before. Emma stood on the porch, watching her daughter toddle through the garden on sturdy legs, Catherine following close behind. Margaret, named for the grandmother she would never meet in conventional terms, had developed with remarkable speed, her connection to the property evident in countless small ways. Plants leaned toward her as she passed. Animals approached without fear. During storms, she laughed rather than cried, lifting tiny hands toward the lightning. She belongs to this land, Catherine had observed months ago, her initial fear giving way to wonder. And it belongs to her. Catherine herself had changed profoundly since the night of Margaret's birth. After returning to the city to settle her affairs, she had purchased the small cottage on the edge of the Sullivan property, close enough to be part of their daily lives, but with enough distance to maintain her independence. The town's attitude had shifted as well. Initial wariness gave way to cautious curiosity as Emma established her business, selling natural remedies based on Margaret Sullivan's recipes. The organic produce from the revitalized farm found eager markets, and the once isolated property gradually became a quiet hub of community activity. Rosa visited weekly, teaching Emma the traditional knowledge of the land, identifying plants with medicinal properties, explaining the significance of the symbols that still occasionally appeared, carved into tree bark or formed by arrangements of stones that no human hand had placed. Emma had embraced her heritage fully, neither controlling the land's energy like Jonathan had attempted, nor surrendering to it completely as Margaret had been forced to do. Instead, she found the middle path: partnership, stewardship, balance. The strange phenomena continued: unusual growth patterns, objects occasionally moving on their own, the faint music that sometimes played from the old radio during storms. But they no longer seemed threatening. Sheriff Mills, now retired but still a frequent visitor, hammered the last nail into the new sign Emma had commissioned. "There," he announced, stepping back to admire his work. "Looks right." The handcrafted wooden sign read simply, "Sullivan Family Farm, Esther, 1891. "It does," Emma agreed, bouncing baby Margaret on her hip. The child reached toward the sign, gurgling happily. "She approves," Catherine remarked, joining them. 4 months until her birthday. "Are we ready for the celebration?" "The town's looking forward to it," Sheriff Mills said. "First Sullivan family gathering in over 40 years. Folks are curious." "Let them be curious," Emma replied with a smile. "Some mysteries are meant to be lived, not solved." Later that evening, after Catherine had returned to her cottage and Margaret slept soundly in her crib, Emma sat on the porch swing, enjoying the twilight. The boundary between day and night had become her favorite time, this in-between moment when ordinary reality grew thin, allowing glimpses of something more, as if summoned by her thoughts. A gentle luminescence appeared at the edge of the orchard, 2 figures walking slowly among the trees, their forms translucent yet unmistakable. Emma had seen them occasionally throughout the year, always at a distance, always together. Her grandparents, still watching over the land and the family they had sacrificed everything to protect. "Thank you," she whispered into the gathering darkness, "for showing me the way." A warm breeze carried the scent of apple blossoms across the yard, out of season, impossible, yet perfectly fitting. Emma smiled, recognizing the response for what it was. Inside the house, Margaret made a small sound in her sleep. Emma listened through the baby monitor as her daughter settled again, knowing without seeing that the silver rattle would be clutched in her tiny hand, the embroidered blanket tucked around her shoulders. In the root cellar beneath the barn, the ancient stone lay uncovered now, its symbols gently pulsing with inner light. Emma visited it regularly with Margaret, keeping the channel open, maintaining the balance that her grandmother had sought and her mother had feared. 3 generations of Sullivan women, each playing her part in the covenant with the land. Emma had made her choice the night of Margaret's birth, not dominance, not surrender, but harmony. The same choice faced every Sullivan woman and would one day face her daughter. But that was many years away. For now there was a farm to tend, a child to raise, a legacy to honor. From the old radio in the kitchen came the faint strains of a lullaby, Willow's Child, the song Margaret Sullivan had sung to her baby daughter, and which Emma now sang to her own. The melody drifted through the old house, carried by voices from both the living and those who existed beyond conventional life, all part of the same unbroken circle. Emma lifted her face to the first stars appearing overhead, feeling the deep contentment of someone who had found her place in the world, not just a location on a map, but a position in the great web of connections that bound past to future, earth to sky, life to what lay beyond life. "We're home," she whispered to all who might be listening. "All of us at last."